Hey, Mike.
Hey, how's it
How
going?
you doing? Good. How are you?
Good. Had some
Ready
great new comics today.
We did. You ready to talk about them?
Oh yeah, it was a lot today. We upped our game from our usual four. Now we got five of them, and one of them was extra long. So,
Three. Oh, yeah, we did, I guess. Wow. Okay. So, where are we starting?
well, we still have the X-Men Ten of Swords stuff all coming together, and there were three issues that we read today about that. So let's start off with Wolverine number 6. Right?
Okay.
Right number? Yes, Wolverine number 6.
Sounds good. What do you think?
So, first off, I once again read these in the complete wrong order.
I actually checked and went to the back of one of the comics, one of the three, and I actually went to go see the order because I was like, I actually thought about it this time.
I think we have the XForce cover up there.
Oh, whoops. Sorry. It's hard to tell, and we'll get into that in a minute. But
right, and see, I would go and check out those orders like you did, but I'm always afraid that I'm going to see the last page as I do that and spoil some big reveal. So I always try to avoid doing that. Somehow, though, I read Marauders first and saw the order there, and still read the next two out of order. I don't know how to say. So Wolverine number 6. I like what they're doing with the setup for Ten of Swords here. So it's now boiling down to, we know it's this contest. It's 10 versus 10. And the heroes have to go and assemble they have to go find their swords to kind of bring the team together. And so we're kind of getting one story at a time of these characters finding their swords. And so obviously this one starts off with Wolverine, and this one leads directly into X-Force. So me reading them reversed kind of messed things up a little bit for me, but I did enjoy this. I will say I enjoyed X-Force a little bit more because that kind of gets you into the story, whereas this one was kind of just the setup for it. But it introduces a new interesting character named Solemn, who I really think was fascinating and comes into play in a big way in X-Force. So yeah, I like this as a setup, but like some of the other ones later. A little bit more.
It's comparing this to Empire, where there was really no guidance. There wasn't like necessarily an order on a week-to-week basis. I mean, maybe there should have been, but there was, it wasn't explicit. This one definitely, Wolverine led into X-Force, and then Marauders doesn't necessarily lead in and out of each other, but definitely takes place afterwards. And so, it's definitely a read it in order event, which they kind of had moved away from lately, where it's just sort of like things happening all at the same time. It doesn't really matter. But this is definitely like part 1, part 2. Like if you were just picking up Wolverine because you like the Wolverine comic, this would make no sense.
Yeah, agree 100%. Like I said, it's a good setup. It's a good introduction to the story. I mean, we've talked about how Ten of Swords and the X-Men universe as a whole has been very complicated as of late. So you'll probably be missing, quite a bit of context if you're just picking this one up, given everything else that's going on. But based on the character, like you can get into his story and understand what he's doing, what his goal is. So you can kind of follow along with that story.
Yeah, and I think the way that these 3 issues have gone, it really simplifies it to 10 champions, 10 swords. I get it. And, it provides this big epic story, but individual stories, because these 2 issues are really Wolverine stories. And I liked it. I'm really starting to, we talked about how like we're kind of overwhelmed with the X-Men universe right now. And I still kind of miss the classic, simple X-Men universe, but I'm really enjoying this. I enjoyed this one, and it's really hard for me to separate this and X-Force,
right?
But because I mean, even if you look at the cover for X-Force, it's obviously Wolverine, and I like how you get this big sort of unwieldy event, and then now you're getting it as, okay, here's how this is affecting these presumably eventually 10 characters that will have to find 10 swords of various iterations.
Yeah. I mean, I agree 100%. You said it perfectly. This week's issues really simplified the whole overwhelming story. So really was able to get into these. And let's jump right into XForce, since we have it up now. Direct continuation of Wolverine. Really like this one. This gets you into, like I said, that new character, Solom. I don't know how you pronounce his name.
It's a comic book. You don't have
a very interesting character, one of the champions of Arakko. So it'd be very interesting to see how he plays into the future of Ten of Swords. I like this. Also, any comic that opens up with Wolverine facing off with the hand, that's going to be fun.
Yeah. No, and this issue I think had a lot of fun things too. With actually both did, of the text, the prose. We kind of talked how that kind of confused us at first, but now that I kind of get that it's just stuff you don't need to know, you can kind of just go back and kind of view it as like, where, like, particularly in Wolverine, I feel like it fleshed it out because Wolverine, so more about what it means, but it doesn't really matter. So I thought they did use that well in these 3 issues.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of cases with those, it's kind of it felt more like it was information for the characters than it was for the readers. And that it worked out with these issues.
So do you want to go on to Marauders?
Yeah, so our next one, so if these 2 issues, if you have Wolverine and X-Force as the story of Wolverine getting his sword for the big Ten of Swords champion battle, this one was Storm's, and this was really fun. I do think if you were reading Marauders, if you weren't really in tune with the rest of the X-Men universe and just reading Marauders as a series, this kind of feels like it presses pause on that story and just kind of takes you completely out of that for a little bit, which happens whenever you get a big crossover in comics. You kind of just put the rest of the story on hold. So it kind of stops that momentum. But as far as the Ten of Swords story goes, I think this was an awesome addition. This was probably my favorite out of these 3 issues.
I agree with you 100%. I enjoyed this issue. If it wasn't, this was my runner-up for pick of the week, because it just was great to see. There's not a lot of combat. I mean, Storm gets to do her thing, but it was all about the interaction between her and, without getting too spoilery, the royal family of Wakanda. And we know there's a long history there. You don't need to know the long history, but it just having that conversation and knowing what Wakanda's values are, it just was. I thought it was an excellent issue.
Yeah, and this is one that you could just pick this one up and get through this story and understand everything that's going on. They provide all the context you possibly need. Like you said, we get a lot of the diplomacy side of things between Storm and, representing Krakoa, but also kind of representing just Earth as a whole, and then Wakanda. And we get to see a showdown between 2 characters I never thought we would see, fight. And again, I won't go into the details and spoil it, but it was really, really cool to see that. Gave me some Civil War type vibes with 2 characters like that coming to blows. This was fun. This was really seeing Storm kind of act almost as a spy kind of thing. There were a lot of just fun elements in this issue, and I agree. This was very close to being my pick of the week as well.
Yeah, and don't let the cover fool you. Wolverine's barely in it, despite the fact he's the biggest head.
Right. Yeah, that's a strange choice for the layout of that cover. And like you said, we get to see them assembling, we're getting the swords, and you kind of this ends with a nice build up as to where things are going for Ten of Swords. It was a lot of fun.
I agree. So moving away from the X-Men universe and into what I call it the Champions universe, the kids of the Marvel or teenagers of the Marvel universe. This takes place after the Kamala's act to make it illegal for kids under 21 to be vigilantes or superheroes, and kind of sees how that we've seen how it affects characters like Miles Morales. In issues we've read, I'm sure other books that we haven't picked has done the same thing. But this is really the sort of when the gang gets together, how they react. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, so I mentioned Civil War vibes from Marauders, and that was really just because of a couple of pages. This one, I mean, this is essentially the exact same story as Civil War, right? It's just without the huge players. And I mentioned probably an annoying amount of times at this point that Civil War is my favorite comic arc. And that makes this one my pick of the week because I am a sucker for anything that is even similar to Civil War. So yeah, I really like
a long time. We are not on the same page here. I like the book, but I felt it was a little. I guess I felt it was a little bit of a retread and didn't really move the story forward. Now I feel like the outlawed story of Champions. The pandemic didn't do it any favors because it kind of just broke it up, and it's really hard to kind of get back. I mean, when you're reading comics in sort of current event style, it just feels like we've been thinking about this story for so long that it just feels like it just needs to pick up a little bit. But this issue was supposed to come out months ago, and I just feel like. I don't know. I don't know what it would have been like. I mean, we can never know, but I just feel like, yeah, they're Civil Warring kids. And it's just like, I get it, but, I would have liked to see it a little bit more on a personal level as opposed to, we're going to stand up for what's right. We're never going to protect. I did like this. They have a sting where like they pretend to have like a purse snatching. And then they're like, haha, we got you. Which is like the meanest thing in the world to do. But, I did like that, and I did feel like a little. Sometimes it was a little too, I guess, just pandering. But it's like we get it. You're kids. You're acting like kids. I don't know. I mean, I liked it. I don't want to say I didn't like it. It was, we've had some comics where I'm just like, no, this is a good issue. Just the reason why it's not my pick of the week is I just kind of felt like we've been there, done that. Like, let's move on.
Yeah, that everything you said is fair. Like I said, I'm anything. I mean, they ran a story that was literally just called Civil War 2, and that's one of my favorite stories ever. So, I mean, anything that's kind of like this grounded story of like could kind of be based in reality. So, like, we're going off of Ten of Swords here, and it's like, okay, what if people had superpowers? And then there was this other dimension that kind of got destroyed, and then the four horsemen of apocalypse are going to come through that dimension to destroy ours. And this one is just like, well, what if people had superpowers? How would other people react? It's more of a realistic as a superhero story can get, I guess. And I really like that. I just like seeing that kind of what different people's takes on this situation would be. I will say this one has a big focus on Miles' perspective, and I really want to see Kamala's perspective moving forward. So I'm curious to see how this plays out, and some of the other characters as well. But Kamala, to me, is the one that stands out the most, especially with, as we've said in recent weeks, her becoming such a big star as far as Marvel characters go recently. I do also need to point out that I agreed big time with Squirrel Girl as she made fun of the acronym for Cradle. There should be an H in there that is somehow working silently. So
the big issue, and I think the cover is just more of a homage there because none of these guys are in it except two. Is SpiderMan 850, which is really SpiderMan number 49. If you're using legacy numbering or current numbering. Whatever. it's just funny how it ended up being the one before the milestone 50th issue for the current run. So it's a little confusing, but it's the return of the Green Goblin yet again. So that he can team up with Spider-Man to battle the Sin Eater.
Yeah, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I mean, obviously, got the Spider-Man shirt today. Loved this issue. Loved the return of the Green Goblin. Always cool when you get a big iconic character coming back like that. It did feel a little bit like, I wish it would have been left more of a surprise. You know, I wish it wasn't like so drawn out. I wish he kind of just appeared and, you know, gave us that, you know, big wow moment. But the issue is a lot of fun. It's very different, but yet still very similar. I mean, you still get Spider-Man being Spider-Man, and Peter Parker at his best, you know, with his quips, but also his, you know, his responsibility, his judgment. He you know, always trying to do the right thing, and you get a lot of that in this issue. It was an 89-page issue, so there was a lot happening. Although I guess it was, what was it, roughly 70 pages for the main story, and then there were a few extra stories at the end there,
basically.
So, I mean, I'm assuming, because you haven't said yet, that this is your pick of the week, correct?
This is my pick of the week.
Yeah.
And mainly for the main storyline. I mean, there's some fun other stuff that's kind of silly at the end, but, you know, seeing Peter Parker be challenged by his peers, seeing the difference between Peter Parker and Miles and Ghost Spider, and I just felt like, I'm sorry, Spider-Gwen, or whatever. And seeing the interaction between her and Norman Osborn, which is obviously complicated. It kind of felt like an annual in the middle of the whole Sin Eater run. You know, because either, you know, the main villain right now is Sin Eater, and whoever's controlling him, but they, the Green Goblin just kind of story just kind of takes place, you know, kind of on top of that. Mm-hmm. And so I really like this issue. It was a lot of fun. And, you know, just it's Spider-Man being Spider-Man. And I think, and, you know, more importantly, Peter Parker being Peter Parker. And I think that's what makes Spider-Man great. I think when you try and put Peter Parker in these sort of cosmic situations, it just, you know, it's fine every once in a while, but he's really meant to have these personal struggles with, you know, personal villains. And I really liked it.
Yeah, I also didn't realize how big a role the Sin Eater was going to play. When you know, he came back with that issue was a couple months ago at this point, and he's still going as the main villain in the series here. Obviously, there's some other stuff, you know, going on behind him, pulling his strings and whatever. Mm-hmm. But pretty cool to see a classic character like the Sin Eater, one that's not so well known. Like, you know, it's not like Green Goblin. You know, kind of getting that recognition in a long, drawn-out story here. And definitely excited to see where this story goes, too, because, you know, another mysterious villain lurking in the shadows here, and want to see how this plays out, especially with Norman in the mix again now.
Right.
Also, one of those stories that came after the main story in this issue features Spider-Man rescuing a wizard dog named Tina. So, you know, there you go. That's a thing you can read this week.
I read that story like 3 times. I'm hoping it's setting up something. Like, anyway. Speaking of Spider-Man.
Yeah, so jumping over to the news, I guess this was probably the biggest news we've had in the past week here. And some of the most perplexing news we've had in a while. I'm very curious to see what's going on here. Jamie Foxx is reprising his role, or at least in talks to reprise his role as Electro in the next Spider-Man movie. What did you think of this when you heard this?
I don't want to get too speculative, but we know the multiverse is coming into play. And maybe this will all tie together, which would just be the most amazing thing ever. I mean, can you imagine Marvel, the MCU's version of Spider-Verse? And, you know, once again, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves as to what could happen here. But if you think it through, there's some pretty cool things that could happen here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool things that I mean, things that you would never think you could ever actually see in a movie.
Right.
And there's kind of been like a precedent set for this with some of the things that DC has done with some of their shows. Not quite, I mean, obviously not to this scale, but like they've done things like this. So I'm really hoping that this comes out to, comes to play out the way that we're talking about here. It still seems to me unlikely, but I mean, the story is kind of lining up that way. And with Jamie Foxx on board, it seems possible.
Yeah, yeah, I don't want to put, I don't want to think too big because people get kind of, but I'm thinking big.
What's up?
A little bit smaller, down to earth. You attended a Paley Fest panel for Marvel 616.
Yeah, this was fun. I've been excited for Marvel 616 for a while. It's just different directors and storytellers, creating or telling a Marvel story that they were interested in. So, for example, on this panel here, you had Allison Brie and David Gelb talking about their specific episodes. Allison Brie talked about the Marvel Spotlight program, which is a program that develops plays for high school, like drama to put on, which, I mean, I didn't know existed until I saw them talk about it in this panel. And now I'm very excited to learn more about it in this episode of Marvel 616. And then one of the most fun episodes has to be one of the most fun episodes to be in this show. David Gelb's episode would talk about the Japanese SpiderMan series, which people are probably familiar with in, GIFs or memes or just YouTube clips. So I'm very excited to see that one and see what that crazy show was all about. I'm excited for 616. This looks like it's going to be a very fun show. I'm looking forward to it for a long time. And it'll be on Disney Plus November 20th.
Do we know if they're doing one episode a week, or is it going to be a...
I haven't seen it worded as though, like all episodes will drop on November 20th. So I'm assuming it's going to be one episode per week, but I'm not sure.
I'm excited for this too. But moving on to merchandise, which is available tomorrow.
We got a new Marvel Rock Love collection. We've looked at some of these collections in the past. Neither one of us is probably going to be wearing any of this anytime soon, but there's some pretty cool stuff on here. The Thor pieces in particular.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and then of course anything Spider-Man as well is always fun.
Yeah, it's I like this stuff because I mean I don't need to it's not my style so to speak, but it's neat that more people can celebrate their fandoms in ways that people like me have been able to, overweight guys have been able to celebrate for years. So that's really cool. Definitely check out the story on Laughing Place if you're interested for more details. But for some merchandise that I can enjoy.
Yeah, so new Marvel Studios Happy Meal toys available now at McDonald's. I went today and I got Falcon.
Ooh.
Here, and he pushed the button, his wings flap. Little button on the back here. So there's nine toys. You got. I'm trying to remember here. Let's see. I mean, going based on the picture here.
Hulkbuster.
Winter Soldier, the Wasp, Groot, Black Widow, Vision, Scarlet Witch. I'm trying to tell who that is on the bottom there. Who am I forgetting? Well, obviously Falcon. And then the Hulk. It's the Hulk in his Sakaar armor from Thor Ragnarok.
I love these Happy Meal toys.
Yeah. And they also, by the way, the bases all connect. So if you collect them all, they can all like kind of line up. So
it's interesting how Hulkbuster is the only one that we don't know is going to be used in the near future. Like we know Guardians 3, we obviously know Black Widow, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Hulk, She-Hulk, Ant-Man, Wasp from presumably Ant-Man 3. Hulkbuster seems like the odd man out here.
Yeah, and I was mentioning earlier, it did seem like kind of a weird collection to feature something like this and not have Captain America or Spider-Man or Thor. Especially Spider-Man and Thor, we know are going to be featured in the future. So that is interesting. I didn't think about the fact that Hulkbuster won't be around or might not be around. We don't really know for sure.
I will say all of the characters that have faces that you may that might be considered modeled after actors are based off of franchises that would be in their merchant promotional window, as opposed to some other characters who would not be in their promotional window. So, when they make a movie, there's a certain period of time when you can use a likeness for things like this without having to license it. So there you go.
Makes sense.
Moving away from the MCU, New Mutants coming to an Ultimate Collector's Edition, 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray digital code for those that need to have this movie in every possible. Be fine. I did, but I don't feel like I need the Best Buy Steelbook version.
Right. Yeah, I was one of probably very few to give this movie a positive review. But I am there with you. It's not something I don't even personally own every individual MCU film on Blu-ray at this point. There's so many, everything's available on streaming services. So I just I've given up on my collection, but
now that you mention it, I still do because I feel like now I'm gonna miss I started. I don't really want to stop, but I never pop them in. I just have them
right.
OCD or something. But but now that there's Marvel MCU stuff that's on television or streaming, I don't know that, that's probably not, well, maybe it'll be on Blu-ray, but that's not really the point. So, it might be time. I guess, because we just finished phase 3. Maybe it's time to stop.
Yeah. Eventually you're going to have to buy some new storage just to keep, collecting Marvel movies. I'm with you though. I enjoyed New Mutants, but it's probably not one that I feel the need to add to my collection. It is a cool piece though. I like the cover of it and everything. It looks good.
I will say though, it's one that you're probably not going to get on Disney Plus or Hulu for some time.
Right.
At least on 20th Century Fox. So unlike an MCU film where where it's going to be, it's not, it'll probably be on, I forget, is there a deal with Showtime? So, they have a deal of deal with somebody. And so it'll probably be there for a while. And it'll probably jump back and forth from, I don't know if it's going to be on Hulu or Disney Plus. It could be on, there's no reason it can't be on Disney Plus. But, it might be one of those movies that kind of hops back and forth for a little while until the rights get settled out. So you got a book you're going to show me.
Yeah. So we learned about this, I don't remember which convention at this point, a while back. It might have been announced at San Diego. And that's the Wakanda Files. And this is basically a collection of art and information from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's done from the perspective of Wakanda. So it's basically the reports from the Wakandan war dogs and then some information from Shuri and just other bits and pieces. They're actually letters from, Howard Stark, explaining how he's going to be building or making the vibranium shield for Captain America. And then the really cool thing about this, though, you can see these Kimoyo beads that it comes with. And this one in the middle here detaches, and it has a little UV light on it, if I can find the button. So let me figure out how to show you this here. And it's probably going to be too light to really see it. But so this little UV light actually reveals secret messages throughout the book. And it's not obvious, you don't turn to a page and it says shine light here. They're really hidden throughout the book. And I've been flipping through the pages looking for every little bit of information I could find. And some of it is actually pretty cool information. For example, one of the messages I found was from a war dog who infiltrated PIM Technologies and has been, working in PIM Technologies. So, and this is, for the MCU. So this is something that's been going on in the MCU that we didn't learn from the movie. So really cool little bits of information like that. And just I mean, you feel like a spy when you're shining a little UV light over your book.
That's cool. It came from the same publisher who did the Galaxy's Guide, or the Travel's Guide to Batuu, and so they're really good at doing those in-universe books. I feel like a lot of times when before lately, like they would always say it is, and then you'd read it and it'd just be garbage, like if you already knew, or just screenshots of the movie. So it's neat that they're, especially now that we're in this drought, that you can kind of have something fun.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, I mean, if you're a big fan of the MCU, really cool piece to have, add to your coffee table book collection. And because people are going to see that and be like, why is there, why are there Kamoyo beads hanging off your book there? And then you can show off your special secret messages, which is really cool.
Great. So we should probably plug that starting tomorrow, bright and early, we're going to be covering Metaverse, which is the virtual version of New York Comic Con. So we'll be doing a special edition of Marvel Time later in, I think, either tomorrow or Friday. But and then we'll be covering other stuff as well. You're kind of going all throughout. I mean, you're gonna have MODOK, you're gonna have Hellstrom, you're gonna have a whole lot from comics like King is Black and King in Black. And so there's just a lot going on. So follow us all day starting tomorrow morning, and we'll be here. We'll be enjoying Metaverse all the way through Sunday. So
yeah, Marvel has a lot to go off of too. There's, I mean, in the next 2 days, I think it's something like 10 or 11 panels that I'll be working on. So yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about over the next couple of days.
So join us, and don't forget, if you want to join us for a fun little casual watch along, we're going to be doing Coco tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific with Tony and I, and maybe some special guests. But we will see you then. So thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.